Entrepreneurship is often talked about like a glow-up story. Quit your job, follow your passion, and everything clicks. But the real journey is usually messier, quieter, and built through a series of experiments that don't always work. In this Thrive Now episode, I'm sitting down with Dennis Buckley to talk honestly about what it actually looks like to build something from scratch. We unpack side hustles, failed ventures, sales discomfort, creative identity, and how AI is reshaping the way we think about writing, storytelling, and personal branding. This conversation isn't about shortcuts. It's about curiosity, alignment, and redefining what it means to truly thrive in entrepreneurship. So, if this feels like something that you are wrestling with currently, especially if you're thinking about those entrepreneurship pursuits, I want you to sit with this reflection question as you listen to our episode. Where in your work or creative life are you treating failure as a verdict instead of an experiment? And what would change if you approached it with curiosity instead? All right, let's get started and dive into today's conversation. Today, we are here with Dennis. Give us a bit of background about where you're starting, where you're coming from, and what your goals are right now.
Sure. Why don't I start with what I'm up to now, which is I started a company that does LinkedIn marketing for founders and executives. We also do some other ghostwriting projects, but that's the core of the business. Started it about 2 years ago. Prior to that, I started a lot of failed businesses. So this is probably my first one that's actually worked. I spent about 10 years in marketing. And before that, I was a freelance writer, ghostwriter. So this business is like the culmination of the skills I've developed over those years. And basic idea is I just wanted to build a business around the skills I had while helping people who could benefit from those services.
And love that you touched on businesses that have failed in the past. I'm right there with you. I've started so many things. I just call them side hustles. I was like, wait, they didn't work out. So that was just a side hustle to teach me something.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh. Can you tell me about some of the businesses that you've started and maybe some of the lessons that you've learned from those businesses that have helped you sustain the one that you have now?
Yeah, I would say some of them were businesses. Some of them were kind of more like ideas or side hustles, like you mentioned, projects. Why don't we call them projects? My very first business idea was, it was more than 10 years ago. I was in my early 20s. I think I'd just discovered, the 4-hour work week. And so I was just learning about business without actually having a business, right? So I was like reading business books, no actual experience. I was just interested and curious, I think. Also relevant at this stage of my life, I was single. I was out of college. I was learning the ropes in dating and very much trying to make progress there. I don't know where this idea came from, but I had this idea that I wanted to start like a dating profile review type of business where I would work with actual women and get their feedback on guys' profiles and give them advice. Didn't work very well. I mean, we got to the stage like we recruited people on Upwork who were interested and seemed like they had kind of an honest take and they were willing to give really thoughtful feedback. I reached out to a lot of guys who wanted to like volunteer just to kind of test run this thing. So like we didn't even really get this off the ground. We never had customers. We got to the point where we had a prototype of what the service would look like, which at the time was like a website. It wasn't an app or anything yet. I think this was a little early for app development. Learnings there was like, there was a lot of resistance when I was reaching out to guys, like they did not want to be vulnerable in that way to accept criticism or feedback. And also, I think we learned that the feedback was very subjective to each person providing it. And so it wasn't altogether reliable, I think. I had a partner in the business who walked away from it first. And then I just kind of lost interest and moved on to something.
I love those lessons. Okay, I'm going to mention a couple of things because I think you're entrepreneurially inclined and you have been for a while because you're in your early 20s reading business books. I'm on the same wave. I've also read that book and a bunch of other business books. And I also had a partner and we tried to start a dating service, dating app. And I'm like,
Really?
just like the path. Yes, ours was like a blind dating service in app form. And we were trying to ride the dating wave boom that happened with dating apps, but too little too late on our end and it fizzled out as well. So I don't know, maybe dating is just like an easy path into like entrepreneurship to test things, especially when you're
Maybe. It
I love
seems easy,
it.
right?
Yes, it
Yeah.
does seem easy until you start talking to people in the business, and then
Hmm.
you may have quarrels with your co-founder or whatever it might be. Yeah. Okay. So you have been starting businesses for a while. Did anything feel unnatural to you as you were trying to find customers, find the fit, find business models that work, especially when you were working for other companies? What are some of the things that you would say you've had to grapple with as you left that employee mindset and into the ownership mindset?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. First, I think some mindset related. Like I can use my current company as an example, and something I've had to work on, pretty recently, to be honest, which is, for most of my career, I identified as a writer. That was kind of like the thing I did in the context of marketing. So like copywriting, SEO, those types of things. But starting my own business, like I realized I had to shift from writer to business owner, and the writing as the core service. That's just one piece of like the sort of hat you put on as a business owner, sales, marketing, operations, like HR, admin stuff. And I think the learning for me was kind of like separating my identity. Maybe this is specific to writers, but like they tend to be very creative, often really precious about their work. And oftentimes, I think this is unconscious, but oftentimes like the work is sort of an extension of who they are as a writer. So for me, that making that transition was kind of painful. And I didn't even realize it until I'd started this process of building this company, where it's just really about taking a step back, sort of properly contextualizing the work as the service that we're offering from the business, and more of like a holistic, I think, approach to business ownership and just how you make decisions with that in mind. The other example is a little more tactical, which I would say is sales. That's something, there's certainly a mindset aspect to that too. That, if you're just working solo and you need clients to pay the bills, found that the actual tactics and like the information to do that was and is abundant online. It's pretty easy to find out and to learn what you have to do and how to do it. But in my experience, there's a considerable mindset shift that had to take place, as opposed to you're working, for a company, you just need to do the work, show up, do a good job. But how do you have conversations with prospects? How do you promote yourself? How do you, build a pipeline and have these sales conversations? And for me, is really wrapping my head around that piece. Like, I don't want to be a salesy, scammy person, but I still need clients because that's what a business needs to run and grow. So yeah, there were a lot of reframes I had to figure out to really sort of unlock that piece and really have success with it, enjoy doing it, feel good about doing it, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the sales piece because I think that's the biggest piece that makes people cringe when they're like, I want to start something, but I don't want to sell people.
Right.
What are some of the things that you found that you can do and that you're willing to do as someone who comes from a creative background? Because I'm very similar. I'm a marketer. I'm like, I create moments. I don't do the hard sales. I don't want to do that. But what are some things from a creative perspective that you found actually works and people feel good talking to you about your services and it doesn't feel salesy?
Well, I think first, this ties back to the idea where like this is sort of the first business that has worked out. I think I'm at a point in my career where I actually have a really good track record. I have a network of people who have worked with me and trust me and can speak to the work I've done. And even on a skill level, like I'm just much more mature in my career to be in a position to confidently create a service-based business around the skills that I can point to and I've delivered and that kind of thing. So that's part of it, being able to just engage with potential clients from that foundation, having work examples, having a track record. I think this is especially true in service-based businesses or like professional services, but I'm sure it applies to other industries as well and business types. And that is like, and this ties into the creative piece as well. Like I put a lot of time and energy into writing out my processes and thinking through all of those details around not just like the actual work that I deliver, but the story and the positioning from the prospect's mind. So if I'm imagining taking a sales call, there's like one scenario where if I'm just flying by the seat of my pants, I just need clients in the door and I'll figure it out. That's cool. And I did that for a while. But on the other hand, like writing out my expertise in long form writing and just clarifying all those details, that was really helpful for me because one, it is just, I think the process of doing that, clarifying the service and the value it provides, how it helps people is just really clarifying. And then that naturally lends itself to these conversations and being able to speak and articulate about these things with potential clients, anticipating objections and questions and what is the value here that we're doing? Like, why are we offering this service? All those types of questions. I think I've just tried to anticipate them, write them down and sort of formulate them into a cohesive narrative. One way to put it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And yes, coming from a marketing background, trying to figure out what people's motives are, what their objectives will be or objections will be, all very helpful. Even if you feel like you're not a salesy person, it's good to have that process. So 100% agree. Let's talk about failure. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but when you do fail, how do you decide whether to push forward or pivot? What's your process look like?
Well, I'll talk about some of the past business ideas and businesses and what I've learned there, and then current business, because I think there's probably a really good insight there that is more timely. I think I've always been really good at recognizing when something is not working and just being quick to move on to something else. I know there's like situations where it makes sense to just stick with it long enough and problem solve and try and figure it out and pivot. Like, cool, that's great. You can figure it out and make it work. I don't know. I've always really trusted my gut when things started to feel off or like it wasn't worth pursuing anymore. Or I mean, have also been more practical reasons like money. I co-founded an SEO agency a couple of years ago, stuck with it for about a year and a half. But at a certain point, like the business just wasn't making enough revenue. And we were like right on the cusp of growing, landing our first couple of clients, starting to feel some traction. But like the honest answer is like my personal runway just ran out and I had to get a job. And that's what I did. That's like a very, I don't know, maybe a really practical example of where the economics and finances just don't make sense for that opportunity. Otherwise, I don't know how common this is, but maybe among creative people it is. I've always paid a close attention to my energy and curiosity about things, about opportunities. Like one example, this was in COVID. I got fired from a job because I was a bad employee. And I don't know, I was looking for something to sink my teeth into. And I was really knowledgeable about SEO. That was kind of one of my specialties. And I'd always heard about affiliate businesses, right? So like you can create a website, create the content, get traffic, and then sell affiliate products. I'd always heard of people doing that. And to me, they always fell in the similar bucket as dropshipping businesses. I had time and I was curious. So I started an affiliate SEO project where I just wanted to see if I could do it. That was kind of my reason. It was a project. Can I make this work? I had no great ambitions with it. I just wanted to see if I could make some sales and turn it into a small business. So I basically dedicated 30 days to just creating an SEO post every day, built the website, picked a niche, and then stopped. Like I didn't do anything after that just to see what would happen. And eventually it did start to work out. Started getting traffic, started ranking in Google, started making sales. And like, it's the closest thing I've found to like a passive income business, which I don't really think exists, but it paid out like $1,000 a month in affiliate revenue for about a year, which was cool. I guess in retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have walked away from that one. I probably could have outsourced it and made it work better. But I think one, it wasn't a profitable niche. It was like consumer products. It was sugar-free products. So like sugar-free coffee creamer, sugar-free keto products, all these kinds of things, which I guess I knew a lot about because I also have a background in nutrition, which I feel like I had an edge there. So I could like write these articles pretty quickly and intelligibly. Anyway, I walked away from that because I just lost interest. I didn't feel like maintaining it, but I still viewed it as a win, because it accomplished the goal that I had set out for myself just to see if I can make it work. And shortly after that, I stumbled into that SEO agency. So I guess to answer your question, I don't have any catastrophic failures. I have a lot of experiments that I've done, projects I've started that I feel like I pulled the plug when I either lost interest or wasn't gaining traction fast enough and just moved on to something that seemed like a better opportunity.
I'm in the same boat. I do the same thing. I really do think it's important to lead with curiosity, because if you aren't curious about a thing, you burn out or you lose interest. And then I love that you said you run experiments. I think it's important to run experiments, projects, side hustles. Not everything has to become like a huge business. That's also really important in an entrepreneur's journey, or someone who's even remotely interested in being an entrepreneur. It's a way to test the waters. Now, from the perspective of someone who wants to test the waters, is it better to keep a full-time job, a part-time job? Like, what is going through the mind of someone who knows they want to be an entrepreneur, but like they haven't had enough experience to do that?
I can speak from my experience on this. And I think there have been like two sets of circumstances in my life where I've gone in on some sort of business or business idea. So I think the first one, I think it's totally possible to start something while you have a full-time job. It's like a safe way to experiment and see if you like it, see if it has traction, see if you could maybe make it work and transition to it full time. I think I think a service-based business is probably the easiest low risk way to test that. I would think, because like, especially in writing, say you have a full-time job, maybe, I don't know, you're a copywriter for a company. You already know how to do the work, right? So if you want to create a business around your skills, like if you already have the skills, that's kind of the hard part. You can already check off the list. And then from there, can you find one client to work with on the side, like after work or on the weekend? Can you work with two? And the sort of path that I've learned is if you can match or exceed your full-time income with a side project, side hustle, and maintain that consistently for a matter of months, like call it 3 months, 6 months, something like that, then that one, just you're proving to yourself that you can do it, right? And then two, you can make that decision. If you want to go full time on the business, you sort of have the proof in front of you that you can make it work or not. Maybe you find that you don't like it and that's, you pretty much prefer full time and the benefits there. Totally fine. That's a very realistic way to test the waters in a full-time position and just to see if you like it. It's very low risk. Now, that being said, me personally, I tend to go all in when I see an opportunity. What I've learned about myself is I don't make any kind of big life change unless I am backed into a corner. So being fired, not having a job lined up, that's an example where I've taken big action and started something. Or being laid off, similar circumstances, not having options. And I don't know, I guess for the listener, like if you want to be an entrepreneur, I think there's probably, especially if you're young, you still have the luxury of time, you can absorb risk a lot better. So yeah, I think those are sort of the two paths that I see. You either like really know and believe that you want to be a business owner or entrepreneur, or if you're not sure, you can test it safely in a full-time job.
Yeah. And that's what a lot of people say. If you're really deep into the entrepreneur books or the influencers online, the ones who have actually made money in business, they
Right.
say similar
Yeah.
things like keep your job, test it out, or go all in and just figure it out. And especially in the age of AI, do you have any hot takes on the age of AI and what it's doing to creative work, writing, starting a business? Any perspective on that?
Yeah, I certainly have perspectives. I don't know that I have any hot takes necessarily. I mean, I think from like a business perspective, it seems to me that a lot of the AI companies they're making a lot of big promises, especially in the agentic AI space. I think there's a lot of really brilliant people working on those problems, but it seems to me that, I don't know, everybody's like pushing against what is possible. And I think there's a ceiling at the moment. I'll give you an example. Like I work with a client who sells fractional executive assistant services, like really high end EA services to people. And in his industry, there are a lot of companies selling what they're marketing as like AI executive assistants, right? Like you can replace your EA with a $29 a month AI tool, which is just not true, at least right now. It's just not. It's like you still need so much human involvement. And this is applicable across the board from my experience. AI can't yet capably complete much of anything from end to end. You still need a human to provide all of the context. A human has taste, discernment, and for agentic AI, which, can piece together multiple workflows and steps, like there especially, you still need a human to weigh in and make decisions and guide these tools really closely. And that's certainly true in writing too. I think I use AI a lot and it's incredibly valuable. But again, it takes a lot of guidance, a lot of context, especially LLMs at this point. Like they're basically really excited interns who want to make you proud, but they often get ahead of themselves or mess up here and there, or, so those are the things. It just requires a lot of guidance. Yeah.
Makes sense. And as I teach people AI, I'm like, this will help you, but you have to bring your expertise. It will lie. It will hallucinate. It will do all the things that you don't want it to do. So yes, 100% with you. You mentioned some folks making promises that they may not be able to back up. From your perspective as an owner, how do you balance like what you already have and stop pushing for more? So like if you're trying to get more clients or if you're trying to elevate the type of clients you're trying to get, like when is enough enough?
Okay. I take this question in a couple of directions. I think maybe like from a business perspective, that makes me think of the shiny object syndrome, right? Like trying to latch onto the next cool thing. I really focus on the core service I provide and I spend most of my time perfecting it and iterating on it and just trying to make it as successful as possible. So I think I've been pretty disciplined about not overreaching into areas that might be interesting, might even be valuable or useful. But I've been good about holding myself back because I know that I can still work on the core service and it can still be better. I can still work with more clients to learn and improve. Maybe that's to my detriment. I don't know. That's just been my style. I just want the service to be really exceptional because I think if that is the case, one, from a business perspective, like I've tried to productize my service and the sort of more streamlined I can make it, the happier clients are. That's just a win across the board for me. And then once, I'm thinking about scale, I think once the core service is really humming and we have a good sales process, I might think about other ancillary services and things like that, but really not thinking about it that much at this point. What is enough? I mean, getting results from my clients, having happy clients, making an impact. I think that's kind of it for me.
It's an extremely honest answer because some people are like, it's never enough.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, no, it has to be at some point, right? That's how you burn out sometimes. I do want to get your take on something that I've been seeing, and I feel like this falls in the category that you're in. I'm starting to see a lot of companies bring ghostwriting in-house or executive writing in-house. What's your take on that? Do you feel like that's sustainable for the companies? And I saw one company paying someone like $1 million, I think
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what it was. Do like basically executive ghostwriting, but they're calling it like head of CEO content in-house.
Right.
Yes. Tell me your thoughts about this budding industry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I have been seeing a lot of job ads for that role. A lot of like personal branding, CEO, thought leadership, that kind of stuff, which I think is great. I think like in-house versus working with a vendor, I think in-house could make a ton of sense. I mean, if you have a dedicated person, you have the benefit of proximity. If you're around all these team members and the executive, like that amount of surface area, I think it's a net positive, however you look at it. At the same measure, I think some folks don't have the resources for a full-time ghostwriter, in which case, yeah, I mean, financially, it makes sense to outsource that. Just get clear on what that service is and that it's sort of solving the problem you're hoping it solves. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If we're taking a step back, like this space is definitely pretty hot right now. There's tons of ghostwriters out there. Why is that happening? I just think digital media and the way sort of communications is evolving. This idea of like a founder-led company or even, just personal branding. In the marketplace, there's a cliche that humans connect with humans, which, yes, sure, that's fine. But I think people are quicker to trust and believe messages that come from real people. And if we're talking about companies, the ideal person for that is often the founder. If they have the story for the company, if they have the vision, if it's delivered from a personal profile, like on a LinkedIn or a newsletter or something like that, I think it just carries a lot more weight than, like a PR story or a post on the company profile. So I think those are some of the reasons why we're seeing this sort of surge in ghostwriting and the demand for that.
I've been following a couple of people who highlight founders online as a vehicle and as a kind of a way to promote their ghostwriting services. I see it all across my feed, so I can tell that it's hot right now. I do want to talk a little bit about your business. What story, what legacy do you want to leave with your business as you are helping founders tell their story better in the age of hyper content? Because we're all obsessed with being online, so I see the importance of it.
I'll speak to the problem we're trying to solve, and then I can talk about
The
some
legacy
semblance
of
of
it.
the legacy. Yeah. One of the issues with ghostwriting is that the way ghostwriting works, and this applies to books too, as well as social media, any type of media, is that usually when people hire a ghostwriter, the ghostwriter works in isolation. You come up with the ideas. Basically, the founder or executive is just paying to put their name on whatever the ghostwriter comes up with, right? And that can work. The problem is, especially when you're dealing with professionals or entrepreneurial experts who really have expertise on their subject, if you outsource the ideas to someone else, you can get attention, you can build an audience, but if it's not actually connected to their experience or their own expertise, what are we really doing here? So, the way we've built our business is we don't come up with ideas for anybody, it limits who we can work with in a lot of ways. Because, say if I work with someone and they're really excited, they like to talk, they have a lot of opinions about things, like, cool, we can take that, we can take their ideas, we can turn it into media. But if the ideas aren't good or if it's not valuable, then it's not really going to work very well. So we really work with people who do have a deep well of expertise. They have a lot of knowledge to share with people that can help other people. And rather than ghostwriting, it's like the work we do is closer to that of a scribe. So scribes have existed for thousands of years. It used to be an actual job. Socrates had a scribe. Jesus had a scribe. Malcolm X had a scribe. All these people had world-changing ideas and information, but none of them actually wrote it down themselves. So we ran with that idea and discovered that There are a lot of people who have really valuable insights and expertise that should be shared with other people, could help a lot of people, but maybe they don't have the time to sit at a keyboard and write it down themselves, or maybe they just haven't developed the skill of writing and they don't want to invest all the time and hours and energy into becoming a writer. And our idea is that you shouldn't have to become a writer to distribute your ideas and your knowledge online. And that's kind of what we do. We work with people who have really good ideas and expertise, and we just take their ideas and package them into media assets.
I love that because not everybody, like you said, is a writer. People like to talk, but they don't want to be on video. So
Right.
there's a market. I see the value, and there's a market for all of it. And it's all valid, especially if you want to have a broader reach than your local communities. I love the idea of a scribe. I've never heard anyone describe their subsection of ghostwriting and executive content as scribe work. So I love that. You probably set off some light bulbs for some people too. They're like, oh wait, that's what I need, a scribe.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we're right at time, but I want to do a fun lightning round to get a little bit more about like your personality, your mindset, and how you're approaching things in your business. So, first question, is there a quote or principle that you live by in your business?
I wouldn't go so far as to say I live by it or like it's the first one that came to mind. And I do think of it often, which is actually a quote by Tim Ferriss. I don't know if it's attributed to him or someone else, but he has this question, which is like, what would this look like if it were easy? Which I think is a really good question. So like anytime I find myself overthinking decisions or processes or any kind of problem, like I think of that question and oftentimes it's really clarifying. Like it's easy to overcomplicate things or try to find a fancy solution when the answer is really some fundamental thing that is obvious. So I really like that question. I think it's super, super useful.
I love that. I often think about things in easy, medium, and hard mode. So I love that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go look that code up or that principle and listen to it a little bit more. I need it in my life too. Next one, coffee shop writing or late night writing?
Oh man, I'm an early morning or late night writer. I find that afternoons are not conducive to creative work. I used to like live in coffee shops ages ago when I was a freelance writer. Like I would exclusively write in coffee shops, but I don't know. Lately, I think coffee shops are good for lower level, like admin work, tasks like that for me, but I can't really write in coffee shops these days.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, what is that person doing? Wait,
Yeah.
I need to call. Ooh, they're not doing so well. Like, yes, I'm right there with you on the coffee shops not being good for like deep work. Okay, the boldest dream you're chasing right now. What is that?
I mean, it's my business. I'm really taken by this idea that you don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to learn how to write, and you also don't have to compromise your ideas or your perspective to, appease the algorithms or chase trends. If you're a professional, if you're a business owner, time is your most scarce resource and you should use it on things that matter most, that are high leverage to you.
Okay, 2 more. One thing you'll never outsource in your business.
I don't know. Never say never on that one. It's hard. It's hard to predict the future, but as we scale and get bigger, of course, some things I'll have to delegate and outsource. I don't know. At this moment in time, I don't know. The client work is sort of probably the thing I'm most reluctant to outsource. Just talking to my clients, having those conversations. It's like, as an interesting aside, like I have a number of my clients describe our work as business therapy, which I thought was very interesting. The first time someone said it, I was like, oh, that's funny, but it kept coming up over and over again. Ooh. And I recognize that space that we have on these weekly calls is something that they don't have in their working professional lives. So I think that time is super valuable for me and for clients.
I love that one-on-one. When I talk to people, I am not a coach. When I talk to people, I get that too. They're like, you're like a motivational coach. And I'm like, Are you giving me my next move in life? So yes, I love that. I love when people reflect to you what you're reflecting back, even if you don't realize it. And I love that you won't be outsourcing that anytime soon.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, last but not least, what does thriving mean to you?
Thriving to me means doing great work that matters to other people and spending time with people I love and care about. I think that's thriving. Pretty
Okay,
simple.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This was lovely. If this conversation resonated, let it remind you that building something meaningful doesn't require certainty. It requires honesty, patience, and a willingness to learn as you go. You don't have to force clarity. You don't have to have the perfect plan. And you don't need to abandon your creativity to build a sustainable business. If something stood out, leave a comment, rate this episode, and share it with someone who's quietly figuring things out behind the scenes. If you're experimenting with a new idea, new identity, or new version of success, please drop it in my dream database. I want to see it and I want to read it, and I want to make sure I bring people on who can match that energy and help inspire you to keep pushing forward. And always remember that unfinished thoughts will always be welcome in my dream database as well. You can find the link in the comment section. Also, you're allowed to build slowly, you're allowed to change your mind, and you're allowed to thrive on your own terms. So, as always, go out and thrive today, not tomorrow.